So this would be our final video, audio. I'm sorry, I keep saying video. Looking at a lesson closure. This will allow you to close your lesson out. It's an activity that you want to plan or develop or implement that will allow you to gauge your student understanding based on the lesson that you provided on that day. The closure can also be used as a formative assessment. You can have one or more formative assessments in any given lesson for any given day. I would not suggest counting every single thing you do and on one lesson plan as your formative assessment. Choose one really good one or two really good ones. Again, the purpose of a formative assessment is for you to gauge student understanding as you process through the teaching of the content. This can be an activity such as a KWL chart. You can actually start your lesson off with one and conclude one. Just Google KWL chart and you'll see where it comes up with things that students already know. And actually the form should have 3 columns: what they know, what they want to learn, and what they did learn that day. So a good practice would be after you do your opening, you can have students, or even before you do your opening, have the students fill out the K column and then have them fill out the W column. They can put the form to the side and then you do your opening. After that, you would bring that KWL chart back and have them to write what they learned under the L column. You would take those up, and then the L column will allow you to determine what they grasped from the lesson that day. Some teachers use their essential question. This lesson plan does not ask you to list an essential question, but once you get out into the field and as you participate in field experience, you will see the teachers are using essential questions. And it's basically that one question of the day or the one question of the week that students should be able to answer based on what they've learned. Some teachers decide to use that essential question as the closing. So it can't be a question where the answer is one word or yes or no. You cannot ask a student if you're teaching regarding fractions, did you understand fractions from today's lesson? They're going to either say yes or no or maybe. That's not a good assessment. What you can do is use a question that states or find a question that asks the students to use higher order thinking and to really get them in a position where they have to explain themselves. You want them to be able to explain themselves or put concepts together, which we would call synthesis, so that you are able to gain an understanding of what they pulled away from your lesson. A lot of teachers like to use activities called tickets out the door. Ticket out the door is not an actual activity, but it's the name of an activity or the process of a closing. So a ticket out the door is usually something that students will fill in or fill out or create and literally hand it to the teacher on the way out as a ticket to get out the classroom. Trying to think of some other examples of closures. Some teachers do games as a closing activity. So I wouldn't say that that would be a good use of a formative. Like you wouldn't use that game as a formative assessment unless you had some way having a game where students had to write down their answers. Again, the closure doesn't have to be used as your formative, but it can be used as your formative. You want to use your learning targets to gauge whether or not your students are understanding what you taught. Because again, as we talked about in the first video, those learning targets come directly from what those standards are asking you to teach, asking you to ensure that your students are introduced to, leading to their understanding of the content. Again, let me think of another closure. Any kind of worksheets, and I'm not a big worksheet person, but you want to have something that you can look at after the students are gone at the end of the day to gauge your understanding. You can also use those closures to group your students. For example, if you notice that at the end of every day you have certain students that just really get what you're teaching, then you want to mix them up around the room and pair them up or group them with students that may not necessarily understand. Closures or even don't have to be graded. They can be, but most teachers don't. Again, it's just a quick snapshot of what they know. You can even have your students come up to you and have certain concepts listed on like a spreadsheet or chart, and with the accompanying standard, and just have all of your students' names listed per class period, and ask them a series of questions, and just do a check off regarding the questions, or have some kind of code that you place in the little boxes on your spreadsheet, so that you can gauge an understanding of what they know or what they learned. The student doesn't have to see that at all. But they can if you want to share it with them. I wouldn't show them the whole spreadsheet, but if you want to go back and have conferences and allow students to have an opportunity to hear from you where you see them as far as their learning, then maybe you can create some kind of little form that only shows their information. Let's move on to homework. Homework is up to you. Again, at this point, your lesson plans are hypothetical, so they can be as grand as you want them to be. And the reason why I say that is in a real situation where you are teaching, you have to plan based on what your resources will allow. In this case, you're not teaching, so if you want to fathom that you're at this school that uses all this grand technology, you can do that. I didn't do homework as I processed through teaching middle grades, because I realized a lot of students weren't returning it. So what I did was make sure that my work sessions and my instruction was high impact, to where we did a lot during the class time, and that gave me the opportunity to answer any questions that they did not understand. But if you decide to do homework, just make sure that the homework is actually a in direct relation of what you went over on the lesson plan that day during your part 2 instruction section. At the bottom of the lesson plan, you will see an area for reflection. You don't have to actually answer these questions on paper. You can if you would like, but these are simply just to get you to consider and to think on how you will develop lesson plans that are beneficial to student learning. Again, if you all have any questions, please feel free to call me on my cell at 706-691-8161. You can email me at creekmerc@savannahstate.edu. You can call me on my desk phone at 912-358-4204. Leave a voicemail. I'm not always in this office. I will always check my voicemails once I get back in, and I'll make sure to contact you. Do not be afraid to ask any questions. I'm here to help you and make sure that you're successful in your understanding of curriculum and assessment. I will talk to you all soon.